Good evening and welcome to Artist Talk on Art. This is Monday, March 20th, 2023. I'm Doug Shear, president of ATOA. This is our 49th year of panels and dialogues. Tonight we have a panel organized and moderated by Grace Roselli, focused on the Pandora's Box project with Vinnie Bagwell, Moko Fukuyama, Babs Reingold, and Cydney Williams. Our copyrighted recording of this Zoom broadcast will later be posted to the Artist Talk on Art YouTube channel. Your questions or comments are invited via the Zoom chat function. You'll find that at the bottom of your Zoom screen, which Grace will use to select some of them. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Grace Roselli by reading her brief bio to you. American painter and photographer Grace Roselli is based in Brooklyn, New York. She received a BFA from the Rhode Island School of Design in 1982 and was awarded residencies at the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture in Maine in 1981, Empire State Studios in New York in 1983, followed by travel to Venice, Italy, where she studied with the painter Emilio Vedova at the Venice Academy of Fine Arts. Since 1991, Roselli's artwork has been included in a variety of publications and exhibited both nationally and internationally. Artwork from her exhibitions and sales are in private collections in the US and Europe. Her previous photographic series, Naked Bike, documenting women motorcyclists, was exhibited in 2017 at Motor Girl, a woman-owned motorcycle shop in Brooklyn, New York. This installation brought together a broad and diverse audience comprised of bikers, local community members, and art world insiders. It was well received with press across the motorcycle, art, and general media. The Pandora's Box project was accepted as a fiscally sponsored project by the New York Foundation for the Arts in 2022. Roselli has been awarded a 2023 New York State Council on the Arts Award, as well as a 2022 grant from the Barbara Deming Memorial Fund and the Puffin Foundation. She was also nominated for a 2023 Anonymous Was a Woman Award and was a 2023 finalist for the Harpo Foundation Award. And now I turn you over to Grace.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. And thank you, Doug and the team at ATOA for hosting this. And my guest speakers, all participants in the project, thank you for being here and on this journey with me. Babs, Vinnie, Moko, Cydney, I'll be introducing you more later. Okay, and special thanks to Babs for arranging this event. Babs, as we said in the private chat before, we've been friends since the mid-90s when we curated the show Voyeur's Delight together at Franklin Furnace, when Franklin Furnace had a physical location in downtown New York. All right, Pandora's Box Project is an inclusive and wide-ranging photographic portrait series addressing the changing face and transformative cultural impact of women, trans, and non-binary individuals in the arts over the past 6 decades. I am creating a historical visual record with Pandora's Box Project by placing contemporary and recent historical creators in their rightful place at the forefront of artistic creation. Art is connected to social change, asking us to question our deepest held beliefs, to celebrate our differences, and bond through our commonalities. It influences how we perceive our world. And I forgot to share my screen. Okay, thank you, Babs. I appreciate it. This is everybody in the project. I meant to do that. Thank you, Babs. You're the best friend ever. Okay. Art, art is connected to social change, asking us to question our deepest held beliefs, celebrate our differences, and bond through our commonalities. It influences how we perceive our world and gives expression to what it means to be human. The feminist and civil rights movements that took hold of our society 6 decades ago gave women a greater opportunity to break out of predetermined identities and create the art that would redefine our era. While women have fundamentally changed how we experience art and culture since the 1960s, their histories of artistic achievement have been under-recognized or near invisible. Pandora's timeline is inseparable from the tumultuous circumstances of our contemporary world. Women participating in the project have experienced ongoing struggles for civil rights and liberties, global pandemic, global warming, and the incredible scientific and technological advances of our era, documenting and presenting the story of women finally being recognized for their place in contemporary culture is critical. Women photographed for Pandora's Box project span generations, races, ethnicities, geographic locations, and art genres. And my photo sessions are structured to honor this diversity. Beyond doing research on that particular individual, there is no pre-production or setup involved with the session. I don't bring lights, preferring to work within the chaos of the situation I find. Each person chooses the location for their photo session. Usually, we're meeting each other for the first time. In a generally intimate one-on-one setting, we'll talk, share stories, I'll take pictures throughout our conversation. After I edit the session and present the photographic results, each woman has the choice of which portraits will be made public. The resulting photographs are dynamic portrayals of trailblazers in our culture, unique women brought together in one place, sorry about that, forming a living archive and lasting legacy. Pandora's Box project is a work in progress. Ultimately, 360 women will have been photographed for the project. 360 degrees forms an infinite, always revolving circle. These concentric circles of knowledge, talent, and innovation, represented by the women joined together within this project, radiate, ripple out into their communities, into the hearts and minds of their communities, and so on exponentially to everyone. 360 individuals photographed allows me the scope to put forth a broad spectrum of women across generations, races, ethnicities, geographic locations, and fine art practices. Collectively, the Pandora Box portraits represent the unbounded numbers of women committed to lives centering the creation of art and the social change that can occur when it is shared with the world. That's a project. And this is why I made the project. It's been hard. And honestly, if I thought through the amount of non-art making I would have to do when I started this project, I don't know that I would have begun. My painting practice had become isolating. Painting is my heart. That's what I do anyway. It had become isolating. My 2 daughters weren't little kids anymore and didn't need the same amount of mom time. So I started riding motorcycles more, made a project with women bikers, Naked Bike. Basically what happens when you get off what should be a gender neutral machine, walk into female. Okay, but I also wanted to be involved with an art community. So in an aha moment, I thought, I'll take pictures of women artists. The few that I still knew recommended other women, and the project grew organically. Maybe because I'm older, maybe because raising children took me out of my own head, I can listen better. Maybe. Maybe because I never really participated in the art world I was so keen on being part of. I started to see a story I hadn't realized or understood was missing. The artist Dorothea Rockburn said to me a few years back, "The point that always strikes me hard is that women settled for so little and are grateful for little. It took me years to understand the discrimination." Okay. I mean, the story was out there in bits and pieces. Future is female, but yeah, so was the past. And by actually witnessing and building this narrative face by face, I'm presenting the hard evidence. How? Because of the social revolutions in the 60s and 70s, women brought to art making a fresh voice. In some circumstances, their whole bodies, their vision, that vision, were liberally borrowed and disseminated through the culture by their male counterparts and subsequent generations of younger artists. There wasn't always a specific line, like Linda Banglis's infamous art form ad with dildo influencing the photographer Cindy Sherman, or Eleanor Anton's figurative sculpture. I mean, if none of you guys know who Eleanor Anton, that figurative sculpture, she was invited, I think it was, I forget exactly what year in the 60s or 70s, by the Whitney Museum to give them a sculpture. And she fasted for a month and took photographs of her naked body, front, back, and center, and presented that as her sculpture. Or I mean, Carolee Schneemann unscrolling of a scroll from her vagina. I mean, More Than Meat Joy, that book rocked my world when I discovered it as a young artist. A recent art market report, The State of the Market for Women Artists' Work by Arun Kakar and Casey Lesser, pretty much states that while better, women's prices are still way low compared to the guys. Although the ultra contemporary market with women 40 and under is even, if not stronger. But isn't this a direct line of what I'm showing here? I mean, the many platforms to show, the non-event of women participating in them, change comes from multiple sources, but the cultural shift regarding women in art comes from boots on the ground activism with, and probably mostly, women artists that kept doing what they do year after year. And the support system started getting stronger in their support as the younger generations had more role models. I mean, residencies for families, art mamas, exponential growth in numbers. And then there's the rolling back of Roe v. Wade, and the struggle continues. Okay. I love this quote by Rebecca Solnit from the book Hope in the Dark. "You row forward, looking back and telling this history is part of helping people navigate toward the future. We need a litany, a rosary, a sutra, a mantra, a war chant for our victories. The past is set in daylight, and it can become a torch we could carry into the night that is the future." I hope in having these talks as they activate the portraits, enabling some of the stories woven through each photo session to be shared with the public. Doing this brings together women who don't necessarily know each other, speaking directly with each other, and an audience in open discussion on how we can identify and move forward for some of the preconceptions, misunderstandings, stereotypes within our own arts community and beyond, to find commonalities regardless of differences. Pandora's Box is about the untold stories, the uncharted life chosen, the imperfect, and how this has expanded our contemporary cultural history, by extension, our lives. It has been and continues to be my tremendous honor meeting these spectacular, courageous, and creative women. Okay, Babs, all right, we could stop this screen share, and Babs generously put together a PDF of all the artists participating. So you could start that, and I will introduce everybody. And everybody, please look at these women's sites. They're in the beginning of the chat, or just search their names, because my brief words here do not do justice to their very distinct and powerful bodies of work. All right, I'm going by age. American multidisciplinary artist Babs Reingold, based in St. Petersburg, Florida, and New York City, creates sculptures, drawings, and installations focusing on the environment and poverty. Reingold has an extensive show in history, including 16 solo exhibitions and over 75 group exhibitions, ranging from museums, universities, alternative spaces, and galleries throughout the U.S. She has work in museum and private collections, including the Newark Museum in New Jersey, Museum of Fine Arts in St. Pete's, Florida, the Birchfield Penny Art Center in Buffalo, New York, and the Savannah College of Art and Design in Georgia. Her awards include a Florida State Fellowship from Pinellas County, Florida, and Atlantic Center for the Arts Residency, and a nomination for the Joan Mitchell Fellowship. She's got an MFA from the State University in New York and Buffalo and a BFA from the Cleveland Institute of Art. All right. American sculptor Vinnie Bagwell, based in Yonkers, New York, preserves African American history by creating art for public places.
Grace, yeah. I just interrupt and make sure, is everyone seeing the slides? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Vinnie is actually next to one of her sculptures in the photo I took of her. That is Ella Fitzgerald, and she's in Yonkers, and she is perfect. Okay, Vinnie uses traditional bas-relief techniques as visual narratives to expand her storytelling. She carves them right onto her large-scale sculptures, cast in bronze and bronze resin. She has won numerous public art commissions around the United States, including, and I think this is my favorite, not my favorite sculpture because it hasn't been made yet, but my favorite commission, including a commission by the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs for Victory, an 18-foot angel that will replace the statue of Marion Sims at the northeast end of Central Park. For those of you who don't know, Sims, the father of modern gynecology, perfected his surgical procedures by operating without anesthesia on enslaved women in the 1840s.
That's still Ella Fitzgerald.
Huh? No, I'm not showing the statue of Victory that hasn't been made. These are statues that Vinnie has worked on. This is slides of her work. It's not corresponding to what I'm saying in the bio.
I provided it. I thought maybe you just made a mistake.
No. Anyway, this is the rain garden, the slide that's up, and this is gorgeous. This is on the waterfront in Yonkers, and it's how many statues is it, Vinnie? It's full size. It's stunning. Okay. Anyway, her awards include American for the Arts inaugural Jose and Darlene Perez Prize for Civic Engagement. She has a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Morgan State University and began sculpting in 1993. Moko Fukuyama is a Japanese artist based in Brooklyn, New York. Her interdisciplinary visual and performing art practice explores the realities and the psychology of everyday life. Fukuyama has received grants, fellowships, residencies, and commissions from Rima Hort Mann Foundation, Foundation for Contemporary Arts, the Jerome Foundation, McDowell, Yaddo, Stoneleaf Retreat, Recess, The Shed, The Kitchen, International Studio and Curatorial Program, and more. She was a 2021 fellow at Franconia Sculpture Park and Socrates Sculpture Park. Her recent exhibitions include Streaming Surface at Smack Melon and On the Ground at the L. Held Foundation. Her sculpture installation, Shrine, in parentheses, Hellgate Keepers, is currently on view at Longhouse Reserve. In 2022, she was awarded a John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Foundation Fellowship. All right. American painter Cydney Williams has been based in LA, California since 2022. Her paintings explore themes of interconnectivity and balance between boundless landscape and the confined societal pressures of the modern world. She is shown in various galleries in LA, New York City, Jersey City, Miami, and Vermont, and with the Pinta Art Fair during Art Basel 2018 in Miami. Residencies include the Monera Foundation with Mana Contemporary in Jersey City, New Jersey, and the Radiate Light Residency in El Dorado, New Mexico. Along with her paintings, Cydney creates spaces to support other artists. Her curatorial work includes Monera Foundation presents Longing for Something at Mana Contemporary, Jersey City, New Jersey. She created the Tip and Tell podcast, on which I'm honored to have been interviewed. Thank you, Cydney. I loved it. To foster casual conversation with professional artists, empowering emerging creatives of all ages. Cydney holds a Bachelor of Science in Art Education from the University of Vermont and has been trained and mentored by New York City artist Dorothy Rockburn. Okay, so now we're to the questions. We could stop all slideshows. All right. So number one question, I'm going to start with Moko first, because you had mentioned that you were an exchange student, a high school exchange student in Iowa, and you've been in the States now longer than you've been in Japan. And that had to have been, sounds more than transformative. Okay, question number one. And the rest of the artists, you will jump in, talk in after. Okay, who was instrumental to you when you were starting out in your art practice, coming of age, and starting to work? What role models were available, are available? Was there an anti-role model who was just as important in shaping your self-perception as artist and your art career? How were these role models affected by whatever society was at that time?
In my case, I don't know, when I saw the question, I was like, immediately the first person that came out to my mind was my own sister, I would say. It wasn't like artist or anybody, but I have a older sister. She's 80 years older than me. So yeah, she's the person who sort of like introduced me to, well, first of all, let's go back to earlier on. Of course, like, you know, I was born in 1981, and so she was, 80 years older than me. And then the Japanese, you know, we grew up in Japan, and Japanese education system was really strict. And basically, my sister, she was really rebellious. I don't like to categorize by generation, but you know, typical Gen X, you know. So she was really rebellious, and she fought the parents, she fought the teachers. And by the time I grew up, she's definitely like had a lot of gates already open for me. And then, yeah, so she's the one, she introduced me to a lot of alternative culture and underground culture, subculture, avant-garde culture, and anything that, you know, that sort of, she basically shaped me to who I am today, basically. And then she's the one first decided to go to art school. And then, you know, so yeah, so she sort of invited me in to see what the art world is. And early on, I was really like 12 years old, but I went to Japanese art university and snuck into their campus. So I was exposed to a lot of contemporary artists in Tokyo. And yeah, and then, you know, and I went clubbing with them, and I feel like, yeah, I was really lucky to have that role model. And yeah, but the one point, my really vision was really shifted to go to the United States, and that was my independent decision. But yeah, so that's sort of yeah, who sort of inspired me the most was my own family member.
Okay. Vinnie, would you like to jump in here?
I don't think of myself as having role models because by the time I started sculpting, I had a number of mentors. I mean, people who kind of oriented me in terms of how to serve as an artist. But I mean, you're talking about the mid to late 90s, when we didn't have the same kind of communication system as we have now. So we didn't have the internet, for starters. So I had difficulty finding quote unquote role models. Many of the artists that I found were teachers, and I didn't want to teach, I just wanted to make, you know. So if I were to pick someone, I would probably say the Foundry was very instrumental in supporting me early on, just educating me, because I'm untutored. I didn't go to school for art. And so, you know, I'm making artwork. I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm just kind of doing stuff, you know. So for instance, my first couple of sculptures that I had cast, you know, they're explaining to me my errors, you know, they're telling me the things that I should do in the future. And they're holding my hand and they're caring. And to this time, I'm going to say still, you know, I mean, I work with Sculpture House Casting in Long Island City. These people are premier mold makers. You know, they are old school artisans. And, you know, just learn a lot from them in terms of how to make quality art. And that was my original goal, to make museum quality art, whether it's indoors or out. And so those were my role models. You know, it was about excellence, you know, trying to create something that had a voice, but also creating something that was well made and had longevity. So that's the answer to my question.
Okay, Babs, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, sure. I'm somewhere between Vinnie and Moko on this. I think of these people who were inspirational to me, as opposed to necessarily a role model, but I have a story where I didn't have a lot of art around my house, so there wasn't a role model within my family unit, though my father was a photographer, and he's a very good photographer. And I came later to find out that he used to enter competitions and do the same thing that I did as a young artist. But one of the things that always struck me, and I can remember as a kid, I don't know what age I was, maybe 5 years old or something. And the first time I was in the dark room and I saw the appearance of the photo come up into the tray, and that magic that struck me. It's like, suddenly it's like, wow, he just made this thing come to life. And then I have a strange history in that we fell into poverty because of my father's illness, and my mother then became dealing with all of it, became mentally ill, and there were 5 of us, and we ended up in the projects in the east side of Cleveland. I used to like to say I had exotic beginnings. I was born and lived 5 years in Venezuela, and born in Caracas, and spoke 2 languages, and then we lived in Barbados, and then things all fell apart. And once we came to the States, and I had not much of a role model, though this man was an incredible man, and he turned out to be my high school art teacher. And this is a case specifically of a teacher having an influence on an artist, and saw the talent and decided to help me out. And he had gone to the Cleveland Institute of Art. He helped me build a portfolio and helped me get into the Cleveland Institute of Art. And so he's the one person that really set my path. And I, at that point, once I started taking his class, I got enrolled into his class, and he was the only other Jew in the high school. So there were 2 Jews amongst all Polish Catholic high school. And long story, special transfer. So here I had this fantastic role model, essentially, that said he believed in me. This person who was an artist, he's a very good artist, and he believed in me. And then later on, it really became my husband, who has been a lot of my role model. He's a bit older, and he gave me confidence in myself, and really steered me in ways to, like, how to deal in certain situations, and brought the man's point of view, which I found fascinating because it's very different than my own point of view. And I would always ask him, how would you handle this situation? And it was always interesting to hear his answer, because it was not necessarily like mine. But so I think that this long way around to say is, at that time too, I'm of a slightly different generation here, and there weren't a lot of women role models either. I mean, they were there, but I didn't discover them because I wasn't aware of the art world until I finally got into art school. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, and Cydney, you jump.
I would say that my initial push into making art was from my mom. At a very young age, I definitely didn't like talk until I was a little bit older, and I had a little bit of learning difficulties in school, and my mom fostered all of that through visual lens and uninterrupted studio time as a kid. She's not necessarily an artist, but she definitely understood the importance of play and access to material, and took me to museums and asked me what I thought and validated my opinion and pushed me into the world with an opinion. So I would say my mom first and foremost. And then, as you know, Grace, where we met was through Dorothea Rockburn's studio, which was my first like real job out of university. And if anyone knows Dorothea, she's rather intense, and she's 90. So she has been in the art world for really.
Yeah, she went to Black Rock. I mean, she
Black Mountain College. She was in it. She was in it.
Yeah.
And she's been in it for a really long time. And her perspective of fighting her way through the world fundamentally changed my relationship to the world in a way that I understood or empathized, because I don't think I could really understand her story because I have not been there. I'm also hearing it from a lifetime. But I could empathize with her relationship to the world, and it kind of helped me navigate how I want to stand and how I want to be represented and how I understand how people perceive me or don't, I don't know if that makes sense, but I think it really shook me that she was divorced in the 50s, and her studio, I mean, she had to have Robert Rauschenberg co-sign for her studio. She couldn't get a credit card, and all of these things that I could do were not that far.
Too, so yeah.
Yeah, she's a single mother. Yeah. She got pregnant at Black Mountain College. Like, there's a lot of things that happened to her that were not unique to her, but she had the spotlight and she had the voice and she had the strength to say them. So that was very informative and influential to me. She's also the one that told me repeatedly that I'm an artist. I always thought visually, I always made, that there was never a moment I wasn't making, but I never called myself an artist. And she was the one that yelled at me for multiple years to say, you are an artist and you can relate to your work and you can relate to the world. For me, it was just a way to process the world. And I didn't know that had value.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So you guys, nobody's mentioned Auntie.
Yeah, I was just gonna.
So I want to just hear if there was someone that said something that just really, said something.
I do want to say something.
Yeah.
I had a couple of, because I was going to art school a little earlier than a few of you, the perception of women in art schools, and I think was a bit different. But there was also the role of something that's reared its ugly head in today's world again, and it was anti-Semitism. And I decided I wanted to be a ceramist. I was going to build these big ceramic things, and I was in the ceramic class, and the ceramic professor says to me, and this is an undergraduate, and I have the last name of Reingold, and there's, I think, always an assumption that if you're Jewish, you somehow have money and you come from wealth. And this instructor said to me, he goes, so what little house in Shaker Heights do you come from? And I got so angry. I don't think at that point in time, I don't remember ever being that angry and taken aback. And first of all, Shaker Heights in Cleveland is a very wealthy neighborhood. And I said to him, excuse me, you have no idea what I've been through and where I come from. And as the person that was like holding my family together as the oldest girl, with mother and father separated, and one living in one projects and the other living in another projects. And it was just such an outrageous remark. But there was also a lot of the misogyny at that time still too, this thing about what women can and can't do in the other classes. And I can remember another instructor saying to me, essentially telling me that I wasn't creative enough, not so many words, but it was that thing. And all that ever did for me was make me more angry. And it's like determined and to prove you wrong type of thing.
Any of you guys?
There was
Moko?
a man, there was a man who wasn't nice to me. I was brand new.
Gee, what a surprise. Okay.
Something brand new. And again, this is before the internet. So how do you find out anything before the internet? There's 411, the Dewey Decimal System at the library, and basically the yellow pages. So someone gave me the name of an artist, a sculptor, and I called him, and he was really, really bitter. Evidently, his day job was he was a plumber. And I just wanted to talk to somebody who was doing what I wanted to do, and he was just really jaded. And when I got off the phone, I promised myself, I don't care how hard this is, I'm never going to be that hopeless. And so it's one of the reasons why I do share my process on social media. You know, I try to bring people into the process of creating art because I think it helps, well, people who want to know, it helps them to figure things out, but also to people who are not into art, it helps them to value the product. You know, process is the product. And so, you know, as I began to learn things, you know, I wanted people to know, like, this is what you got to do this. This is crazy. Look at this, look at that. You know, and again, you know, I think from the response that I get from social media, people do find process fascinating. You know, there's no such thing as a stupid question, you know, and particularly in a process that's not well represented. A lot of people know nothing about public art. They know nothing about bronze casting. They know nothing about anything, you know, in that arena. And, you know, it's important to me that people learn what it's about because it helps to add value to the work that I do.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move to the second question because I see that time is starting to get a little dicey. All right. The second question, and I'm going to start with Cydney on this one. Okay. Particularly because you've been in the situation where, as a very young artist, you're one of the youngest artists in the project. You've worked with one of the oldest artists in the project, Dorothy Rockburn. Okay. What does being in this project mean to you? All of you guys, because you're all going to answer this. How do you see yourself in your photo? What did you think, feel during the photo session and its resulting portrait? How do you, or do you not, navigate internalized perceptions regarding cultural constructs of female beauty and aging? If so, how have these perceptions changed over your lifetime? I find myself, when I'm editing my photos, navigating a lot. So
yeah, so Grace and I met when I was working for Dorothea, and she took Dorothea's photograph, and then Grace was like, oh, you're also great, and I want you in the project. And I think at the time I must have been like 22, 23. Yeah. So I was definitely, I'm 28 now, just born in 94, just to give everyone context. So I am a baby, and I understand my position as a baby. And I think that's how I felt having my portrait be taken, that I can continue a lot of people's conversations, especially a lot of people's conversations that maybe didn't have the audience. And that is something I'm really passionate about, is weaving together all of our stories and all of our works and having them reference each other and giving ourselves the context that we deserve and need to feed off of each other. I found myself in college referencing a lot of male artists because that's what I was learning about. And now I want my work to reflect. Yes, still. Oh, yeah. Oh, things have not really actually changed that much. I mean, unfortunately, but yeah, it wasn't it really, like, you learn the kind of the same shit. But I think it's really important to reference the people that you want to see in the world. So that's how I see myself in this portrait, and I am bent over backwards in this.
You're doing a headstand, Cydney. You're like having an amazing yoga practice, and you did a headstand in the back of this restaurant in a little park. And that I chose as the photo. And you were cool enough to go with it, you know? I mean, not everybody would be happy with, this upside down photo. So,
Yes, no, that's true. And I think I happen to like, as the youngest in my family, and I just go with the flow. I'm very, like just a person that is pretty fluid in general. I liked this photo because we quite literally, as women, like I have felt like I've had to bend over backwards, and I still, even being the youngest in this project, I do feel like there is a point where you have to prove yourself. And I'm quite literally bent over backwards with one hand over my throat, to say that like I do have the power to have these creative thoughts and say them, and recognize the words have meaning and power and presence. And what was women, like your beauty as women? Like,
yeah,
how do I think about that?
it's the cultural construct. I've noticed even with my daughters, 19 to 23, my 19-year-old, I think she's a little bit more involved in the acting and fashion world,
Yeah.
So she's very aware, social media and the Kardashians and
Definitely. I am thankful I'm a painter. I am
no,
thankful.
You know something, Cydney? No. Okay, no, I'm gonna stop you right there. I have
I want to
a
hide behind
number.
my work.
All right, no, because
Yeah,
no, this is-
question 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, along with question 2. So I too am just like, okay, so I know what question 2 and 3 is, but you've got like 4 questions in one question.
yes, I do. They're compound. Because I'm sneaky. Because they're juicy and I couldn't separate them.
They are
Do your best,
juicy.
Vinnie. Do your best, Vinnie.
Yeah, so Vinnie, what do you think? I mean, navigate the wrinkle.
Okay, so here's the thing. I was referred to you by Meredith Bergman, who is a public artist as well. Thank you, Meredith. And I was delighted to be included because, of course, women have been marginalized in the art world, but so have Black people.
Uh-huh.
And so as a creative storyteller, I think that I'm very happy and very proud to represent Black people in your project, because that's what the artwork is mostly about: marginalized people of color. And so, if you're going to try to cover the bases with the who's who in the arts in terms of women, I generally feel like I should hold a space, because there aren't many African-American women in the public art arena winning and doing public art at this time. So I'm delighted to be a member in your cadre of women. In terms of aging, I don't really have a problem with aging and try to moisturize,
I don't mean that. I mean, it's
I don't
like,
mind gray hair. That doesn't bother me. I love my hair, so I don't really care so much about the color of it so much. But I find that people are biased. They're biased in so many ways, ageism, sexism, racism. There's so many isms. But I think that the project Pandora's Box is wonderful because having so many of us in one place that have worked to tell the stories.
yeah.
It's a great community. Norma, you got your mic on?
I'd never sit there.
Norma, can you turn off your mic? Mute your mic. Can somebody mute?
Okay.
Yeah. Moko, why don't you jump in here?
Yes. Hi. Yes. Cool. Yeah, I was introduced to you by my friend Lisania Cruz. She's one of my favorite artists and good friend. Yeah, I was like kind of simply at the time looking for somebody who would take the headshot of me, and then somehow like it would. Yeah, then like, oh, why don't you contact Grace? And then it wasn't the ordinary headshot, and it was like much more and far beyond. And I got really lucky to get to know you. And yeah, I actually, honestly, I am, through my work, through my artwork, also through job, I'm always behind the camera more than in front of a camera. So, oftentimes I'm really like aware of like what's to be in front of a camera. And yeah, it was really, and I'm not necessarily comfortable being filmed. I'm much more comfortable filming or photographing people. Not a photograph. I don't photograph. Sorry, film
Yeah.
people than being filmed. So, but you really made it, I don't know, the very joyful experience. At first, like, we sat down and talked for a long time. We almost forgot that I need to get my photo taken.
Well, it helps me too, because
Yeah.
it helps me kind of see who you are. I mean, everybody in the project is different and their photographs are different.
Yeah. So
You
yeah,
know,
your
I don't want cookie cutter, just like
Exactly.
everyone's not. So
Yeah, I could immediately sense your effort to get to know the people you're photographing and really try to learn. And also, I got to learn about you, where you come from. It was like a really beautiful mutual, like, understanding of this project.
it
And
was a nice conversation for sure.
yeah, so yeah, it was so great. And then then ageism. Yes, I'm 41 now, 42 maybe even. I gotta stop counting after I turn 40. And I can see myself changing daily. I feel differently, my body feels differently, and I photograph. My photograph turn differently. It's not like there's definitely insecurity every time I'm like being photographed, but I don't know. I really like the photo that you took of me, came out really
Thank
like,
you.
whoa, I look good. I look powerful. I look sexy even.
Yeah,
So-
I guess I put this question in there because every single artist, I mean, except for maybe every single, I mean, it's not just artists, it's the support system too. I include the support system in the project because it takes a village to raise a baby. The support system goes hand in hand with the artist, everybody together. That's why that support system needs to be stronger in choosing female artists, women of color, et cetera, and older women. And not just the very oldest women, but the flyover states of 50s, 60s, and 70s. Anyway, I just find myself, everybody has something to say about their picture. Everyone's like, I'm so uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable being in front of a camera. You don't see a headshot of me. So I gotta rectify that at some point. But it's what I mean by like navigating the wrinkle. I mean, I want everybody to look like they've slept well that night. But then I'm not sure what else to do. It's like the lighting varies.
Good lighting.
Lighting's not always good. I'm not using lights. I'm not imposing my view of light on someone's face. I'm doing whatever is there in that moment. And if it's fluorescent lights, if it's a bad window, whatever, I'll get something, because that's what the project is. It's about you all. But still, it's like I've just gotten a lot of comments that I was very
Lighting
surprised
older
by.
women. I'm sorry, we need good
especially-
lighting.
Huh?
I'm sorry to say, with older women, older people, lighting is really important because eyes hollow out. I mean, some of the wrinkles is that lighting creates shadows. And so, for myself as an aging person, it's like, no, I need good lighting. And again, you being a photographer, lighting should be your specialty because good lighting, you see it in a space of any kind. Like the lighting's a little better here than it is over there. And again, if you're trying to make the best representation of an older person, keyword, older person, lighting is actually the answer to the question.
It's
That's my-
interesting because Grace took my photos when I was up for a show at Hudson Valley Mocha, and she came up and she went and we found some spots, and she said, "Oh, the light's good here." So she was aware of it, and she took great photos of me. So that's an interesting thing to think about, that natural light. I mean, lighting, I understand, like some photographers, they just depend on those lights, but I kind of like that natural light thing. And then of course, Grace does magic in Photoshop to help out a bit too.
All of your images are
but-
magnificent. So clearly you don't have a problem understanding lighting. I'm just simply saying, when you're talking about aging, knowing lighting does make a difference.
But that speaks to my point though, Vinnie.
Yes.
Like, okay, by
People
you
want to look their best, damn it.
faces, by you saying
They
that.
need lighting, help them.
Yeah,
But what's wrong with the fuck? Excuse me. What's wrong with the wrinkle?
Oh, no, it's not even so much the wrinkle. For
No,
me,
but I
it's
love
shadow.
the texture.
No,
Oh my
no,
God. I
shadow.
was
I'm only talking
doing
about shadow.
totally cross lighting if I could each time. I mean,
can I
like a
can I
tree
weigh
bark.
in? Can I weigh in here and get back to answering? Because I would like to answer for me what the project means to me. Can I weigh in
Sure,
here?
yeah, I'm sorry, Babs, go for it.
I thought of the moment Grace told me she was doing this project, I got so excited about it because I really thought of this as a feeling of belonging to a community. And there are so many women that don't really feel like they belong to a community. And that's one of the things that once you're, I mean, we've built, I've known Grace since, as I mentioned, since the 90s, and we've built a community just knowing each other. And look, tonight I've met 3 other people I've never met before. This is fantastic. And you're bringing people to this talk, and then I'm bringing people to this talk. So we're being introduced, and it's wonderful that women are supporting each other. And I think of it, I mean, I'm imagining this is what Grace was thinking when she started this, as she mentioned. So I just love the idea of this project. And I also wanted to address this idea, though, of beauty and aging. And Vinnie, I'm right there with you, man. It's like this thing about aging, and you're so self-conscious about it. And all I could think of is, Jesus Grace, couldn't you have thought of this when I was like 20 years younger? It would have been nice to be in this project 20 years ago, but we weren't thinking that way. And here we are today at this age, and this is what's happening. And the other thing is, I make work about beauty and aging. I have pieces that are specifically addressing beauty and aging. And I collect my own hair. I've been collecting my hair loss since 1998. And it all started with a thyroid condition, but and all these projects that I make that revolve around hair are about beauty and aging, but they're enmeshed in the other work as well. They have now sort of moved over into being also about the environment, and the ideas of the environment and the beauty of the environment, and how we see about decay and what is happening in today's world. So it is very weird to be on the other side of the camera being photographed, because every artist is the maker and the doer, and then suddenly you're like the object. There's this objectification that happens the moment the camera is turned on you. So that's an interesting thing to think about. And I wonder if, Grace, you're thinking about that when you're taking the person's photo. Are you thinking about what it's like to be them? Or are you just thinking about grabbing that fantastic photo of them? Are you thinking about, like, what if I was I was the one being photographed? Do you think about that? Or is it just it's like you're there
I
just...
kind of spend so much time talking to people before I take their pictures. When I work, kind of like when I paint, I'm not really thinking. I'm just kind of doing. So when I'm taking that photo, I could recognize if I'm getting something good. I don't even look at what I'm shooting as I'm shooting. I'm just like, okay, this is good. This isn't working. Let me try to get something that does work. And I tend to overshoot because I'm so insecure. I'm like, oh my God, what if I didn't get who they are? What if it's in the editing process that I start to think, and and then I'm like, oh my God, I should have done this, that, or the other thing. But in terms of lighting, it's like light. I'm not a natural photographer. I never studied it. I picked this up because this project needed to be done with photography, and I'm a good photographer. I've been taking pictures for my paintings forever, It's I don't know. Have I answered your question?
Any more questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was really moved when you introduced the project, the slideshow was going on. You get to see. Was it everybody? All
It's right now I'm up to about close to 260 women.
Okay.
When I started doing this project, in terms of choosing who's in it,
Mhm.
because everybody represents basically the world of all of us, because it's just me doing it. It is a witnessing project. I am going person to person. Also, I see a number of questions about finances through this. Let me say this. This has been a labor of love. When I started this project, I'd never really written a freaking grant. I did not know how to write. This project has changed me. I had to learn so much stuff. I don't know how I survived in this world before. I probably really just, was the edges or something. I raised kids and stuff. Anyway, so financially, there was nothing, but my desire and obsession, once I realized the story was there to be told, I figured it out. This year, I learned how to write. I'm starting to get grants. Not enough. So if anyone wants to nominate me for anything, those Tiffany's, MacArthur's, anonymouses that I didn't get, you all know who I am. Okay. Anyway,
And that leads into your next question, Grace. That actually leads into your question about financial situation, number 3, where
Yeah,
you're
how did-
asking.
okay, let's start with financial. Actually, Vinnie, you starting out, how did financial situation, community support, and/or attention or lack thereof affect your ability to be an artist, to be seen as a serious artist? Who is the community that supports you? What have you found surprising, transforming about your art journey, your impetus to keep going? I mean, this is a crazy and brave lifestyle we've all chosen. It's crazy,
So lucky for me, I had mentors from the beginning of time, 8th grade. And by the time I got out of college, I had a mentor who was 20 years my senior, Harold E. Sanson, who is an artist and a businessman. And he is the person who challenged me to be self-employed, and also the person who challenged me to learn how to write. Now, mind you, I already knew how to write, challenged me to learn how to write for fundraising, for grant writing. In other words, one of the things that he underscored was not to have the what do you call it? The please, sir, may I have some more attitude, to come up with a winning idea and then sell that idea. And so I think the first project that I funded was probably a project for my family. I was doing a book that needed funding because we had to print it. And then I wrote a grant to the city of Yonkers, and I did a publication called The Study of African-American Life in Yonkers from the Turn of the Century. And again, the funding paid for the book, and then we got additional funding for an exhibition. And then fast forward, when I became a sculptor, the question is, how do you afford this medium? Because right away, I discovered I needed to double my income. And just imagine if you fall in love with some medium and you're really, really, really amazingly good at it, and now you get to double your income. How do you do that? And so that was kind of the beginning of my learning how to even look for money. And then, of course, the challenge is coming up with brilliant ideas that other people will care about, and then finding people who fund the kinds of things that you want to do. So it's like looking for a partner and getting married, finding someone who has the same values that you do, and then coming up with an amazingly flawless idea that they have to say yes to, learning how to compel people to say yes when you're not in the room. I mean, it's a challenging ability to acquire. But over the years, I have become relatively good at it, and I continue to keep trying to perfect writing, perfecting the power of persuasion, still, again, coming up with an idea that's compelling, so that there's no questions, like you win. So that's an ongoing challenge.
I had I chose a bit of another path in the beginning. I started out, I was going to be a painter and do ceramics and all of this stuff. And I changed my undergraduate to graphic design so I could make a living when I came out of school. I came from poverty, and I was like, how the hell am I going to make a living? And Vinnie, you struck a chord there with me talking about, so it's like being a salesman for yourself. And I started out then and worked in ad agencies and design firms and publishing firms, and I was always the one presenting the project. And eventually you learn a lot of stuff when you're the one in charge and you're making presentations, and how do you sell somebody on your idea? And I was constantly selling people on my ideas. So
That's
over
exactly how I
time,
started too. I know what you mean. That's exactly how I started.
right. And the business world actually does teach you a whole lot. And if you haven't been involved in that world, you don't know what somebody's saying to you when they don't realize what it's like to walk into a room and you got 5 people there sitting there. Okay, show me what you got. Start the salesmanship. And you pull out your drawings and you pull out your idea and you tell them why it's going to be fantastic for them. And then you do the same thing when you have a visit from somebody, you're enthusiastic about your work. It gives you confidence when you see what you're doing works. That's another thing that gives you confidence. So it's not particularly a role model, but in a way, it's you just being involved in that particular position gives you that strength to go in and convince a room full of people that this is who you are and this is what you're about, and it gives you confidence.
Rebound. Can we talk about rebound for a second right after that? Because you also have to learn how to take rejection and do it again and again.
Yes. Yes.
Again and again. And
And again,
you lose, you win, you lose, you lose, you win, you lose, you lose, you lose, you lose, you win. You have to figure out, and it's a personal thing, you have to figure out how to maintain your resilience. You have to figure out how to maintain your self-respect, your self-regard, your self-value, your self-everything, because you're going to lose at least half the time, if not more.
oh, more,
And the question is,
more, yeah.
you have to learn from your losses. You have to figure out, what was my weakness? What could I have done better? I mean, you have constant self analyzation, constant.
And ZH51.
It's constantly
Figure out what's right and what works.
Okay, Moko, could you jump in here?
Yeah, sure. I echo both Vinnie and Babs in this one. Yeah, I definitely spend countless hours and trying to perfect my writings and trying over and over again, being rejected over and over again, and I'm still here. But at the beginning, so I left my parents when I was 16, so I have never lived with them since I was quite young. So,
I went out about 9 a.m.
Okay, maybe she needs to
Somebody
turn off the microphone.
has to mute.
someone else
There
is
you go.
talking. Lemar Pelly, thank you.
Quiet.
I left my parents, Japan, when I was 16. So I left before I learned about finance, so how to determine your future and all that. So yeah, I feel like I was not finished with what I should have learned from my family or Japanese education system. So I kind of have to learn everything on my own. Anyway, so I moved to Memphis, Tennessee, went to go to art school there. And it was kind of before the internet time also, but I knew, like, by searching I really just went through books and of colleges in the United States, and Memphis College of Art was the cheapest art school in the United States. And that was like a main reason why I went there. And they gave away a scholarship to foreign students, which is unheard of because the United States college, they don't really give a financial aid to foreign students. But this college did. So I was like, oh, I'm going there. And I also, again, like, I was really into the American music and the sort of roots of American history of American music. And I knew, like, Memphis, Tennessee was where a lot of American music was born. And, so I really wanted to go to this city. So I went there. But, then again, probably maybe probably the lack of my English skill too, but I really didn't understand, like, how this art world works, like the tradition, like really typical trajectory of moving on to the art world is through grad school. I didn't kind of know that. And also, again, I didn't have a financial aid. So going to grad school wasn't really my option. So I moved to New York and I immediately started working jobs as artist assistant. And I worked in service industry and I cleaned people's toilets. I did anything. And I didn't mind that. Maybe it was just my youth talking. I really didn't mind any, I thought job was job and I did, yeah. And then everything was fascinating to me. So then, but I would say 2020 was really rough though. I mean, I was full of anxiety, mainly because of the lack of finance and opportunity. And then also I got being comfortable with working for other artists too. So I knew I had to get out of it somehow to do my own practice. But again, there's no money. So I started my own business in like the late 20s, doing a video production company to sort of, I filmed anything like, I filmed weddings, corporate events, fashion, or like news, any kind of like a job opportunity that takes filming and editing. I did that, and that started kind of generating income, and I just spent all my income to make artwork, really. And then finally, like in my mid 30s, I made a film, fully self-funded film, and did this shameless self-promotion. and I kind of produced my own couple art show, just fully self-funding in a venue that nobody knows.
Grace, you're muted. You're muted. You had a question, you're muted.
But sort of got eventually, by doing that couple of times, the people started noticing, and then somebody nominated for Rima Hortman Foundation Emerging Artist Grant. That was really like the beginning of a sort of recognition of my work.
Trial and error, Grace. The answer to the question, honestly, and if somebody correct me if I'm wrong, they don't teach art as a business in art school. Most of the people that I know who actually went to art school will say they did not teach us business in art school. You come out of art school, I'm not talking about the major art schools, you may come out with a laundry list of skill sets, but they don't teach you how to put that in a context of a business. So business oftentimes is through trial and error. Like for instance, with your Pandora's Box project, you invested in your own project, you got it going, you did some of it, and then you talked about it, and then you applied for funding. But usually artists invest in themselves first. That's usually how it works. We have some passion that we want. We like to eat every day. We try to figure out how to make money with that passion. And we talk to our friends and we talk to other artists, but most artists will tell you they didn't go to business school and they didn't learn business in art school. So it's trial and error.
Vinnie, going off of that, I just want to talk about being a young artist, and how I don't have I don't have really any capital pushing me into the world. And it has a tremendous effect on my worth. And I think navigating, having to make choices that other people of my peer group are doing, like I can't attend everything. I can't spend money on wedding gifts and go to everyone's everything. And I can't, these are all choices that you have to make, and they build upon each other, and they start when you're really young, and they start to shape this life that can sometimes feel like you're not sure what you're doing, and it can sometimes feel worthless, and it can sometimes feel isolating because you have to make these bizarre choices that are
It's
dedicated.
normal though. But you're talking
Yeah.
about, it sounds like my 20s. It sounds
But
normal.
I feel like people don't chat about it. Like people don't chat about the fact that like you may have a couple months of no sales. And I got to the point where I was full-time selling when I first moved to LA, I made my first rent, like selling my paintings in a comedy club the day before my rent was due. And I was able to pay that month and be okay. But for me, being a part of the world and being a part of the working world, and making sure that I have jobs that help interact with everyday people inform my work, because I think if I get too self-revolving and too isolated and too deep in my work, it becomes irrelevant. It's not about existing in common spaces. It's not about knitting us all together. It's not about this flux that we naturally have when we're spending money out in the world that helps us connect to our communities, that helps us get to know the people down the street and their business and what their story is and how their art has shaped their commerce. So I think that, you know, having a daytime job and being an artist is powerful and should be talked about more, and that you don't need to put all of the weight on the value of your paintings, because for me, or your art in general, for me, like, I didn't want my work to have an immediate turnaround for sale, because what if it's not ready to be received by the world? You know, like, it needs time. Some things need time, and to be seen, to be sold, to be respected, and to engage in their proper time frame. So I think that was a really hard lesson for me in my first couple of years, especially coming out of an artist residency that was paid for, and then having anxiety about, oh my God, how do I make my own studio?
You have to have patience with yourself, tremendous
Yeah.
yourself, because there's the voices in your head, you know, the one with the chair and the whip, you know, that you're trying to explain reality of what's happening. And then there's somebody in you that's thinking you should be doing better. You should be doing, I mean, that just basically chastising you. And then there's something called reality, like, yeah, but this is what's actually happening. And then you have to find some sort of nice balance where you console yourself and say, no, I am a genius. And someday somebody will figure that out. But then you have to live long enough to get to that part. And so it's somewhat of a juggling act, trying to find balance between where you are versus where you know you're supposed to be or where you're supposed to go. In other words, I remember very vividly one of my older cousins, my family is littered with artists. He says to me, I was complaining about something that I was experiencing. And he says, if you were making money and the situation was the same, you'd feel differently. And I was like, no, I won't. He said, no, you would, because you're thinking that you need the money, but you don't really need the money. You need the money to survive, but you're already a genius. And I'm like, yeah, but a genius will starve as fast as anybody else. You know, so that the challenge is trying to figure out the happy medium where you have enough time and enough energy to be by yourself, to think your thoughts, to come up with these brilliant ideas, but then you also have to set aside some time to earn a living, however you choose to do that, whether it's retail or waitressing or selling cars or, you know, selling your artwork, whatever, but you've got to find some kind of balance for stability. You got to be stable, because I'm here to tell you, being homeless, living under a bridge is not goals.
And I think
You know,
about that. So and to that point, I think we have, it goes to 8:30, right? This talk?
yeah, I just wanted to weigh in briefly. I'm sorry, Grace, I got to weigh in on this one because it's an interesting thing to discuss. How do you financially support yourself? And I made a very conscious decision. I mean, all of my installations are self-funded, with the exception of hither and thither where I raised some funds or you get a grant here and there. But I made a choice a long time ago after I didn't want to be this person working as a designer, and I went back and got my MFA essentially fully paid for. But then I came out, and once again, and I taught for a little while, and which is a worthless amount of money to teach, unfortunately, especially if you're adjunct. But I had to go back into that world so that I could do what I wanted to do. And one of the things that stuck with me is I had started to sell some work with a gallery in Atlanta. And a person said to me, well, why are you doing these installations when you could, like, this work is like selling. Why don't you just like do this work and like do it? Because it didn't interest me enough to keep doing just that. It was a piece of something else. So this way that you have to figure out how you as that person are going to navigate to be able to make the work that you want to make. Mm-hmm. And how do you do that? And it's starting out, if you're in your 20s, it's like, my God, wait a few years, man, it's going to be a whole different world. Anyway, sorry, I had to jump in on that.
It dips up and down. I just want to do a quick shout out to the people that helped me learn how to write in this room right here. Babs, Vinnie, Marcia, I see you. My friend, I saw her, Nicole Rose was here, my biking buddy. You all, over these past few years, have had to listen to me and correct my writing. And I really appreciate it because this has been a journey. I see a question in here from Aviva Ramani, who still has that same backdrop I photographed her in, saying, how has this project changed your thinking? Oh my God, I have changed so much over the course of this project. I mean, from learning basically about business, I spent my 20s waitressing, same shit as everybody else, I'm not coming from money. And I mean, it's like, I needed to make my art. And it's like those few times you sell something, oh my God, give an artist a little bit of water and watch us bloom, and it just doesn't happen enough. And it's like you keep chasing that. How do you keep this stuff going? But in terms of changing me, I had lost my idea of what art was. Okay. I was painting my love and it did not speak to me. It stopped talking. I could make the marks, but it wasn't saying anything. And in doing this project, I really realized again what art is, what an incredible impact it has on our culture. You take art away, what do we have? It's not always seen, but what do we have? And then I started realizing when I'm taking pictures of everyone, oh my God, these women, women have always created art. There's so many women that have been unsung over the ages. The Guerrilla Girls take the name of all these dead women artists, but there wasn't the strength in numbers and there wasn't the revolutions and explosions of the 60s and 70s and just kicking that door open, and still trying to keep it open. That really just changed how we move through the world. Anyway, anyone have a question before we have to close this down?
I just wanted to make one comment to your comment. And I think that creating art is hope and creating art is curiosity. And there's a comment by T.S. Eliot where he had this isn't the exact quote, but my husband has said this to me from time to time. And he says, without hope, there is only time. And we are navigating this world where we are, when you hope, and one of the last parts of your question, which we didn't get to, is just what keeps you going? What is it that keeps people doing this stuff? Because it's a very difficult life that we've all chosen, which Grace has mentioned. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I know, Grace, you want to get to a few of the questions in the chat, but that, like, what is it the thing that keeps you going? And I think, again, it's this idea that you keep hoping for the next thing as well, that this is what keeps you moving.
Greater later.
Pardon me?
That's my new mantra. Greater later. Greater later. It's like, how they talk about some things being wasted on the youth. It's like, no, the youth is kind of like the foundation. It's like, I think starting in the 40s, going into the 50s and the 60s, that middle part is when you really discover the value of what you do, who you are, what matters. You become more discerning. You figure yourself out, you figure out other people, you figure out a lot of things. And then at that point, you've also learned how to listen. The information kind of comes through you. It's not like you learn how to do something, you didn't do it. Real artists, and there's something called the flow. The artwork comes through you, literally. And so, I think that the challenge is having enough patience with the process to get through it, to learn how to listen, to be willing to be a beginner, to learn how to ask people questions, to not stop yourself, to not block your own blessings. And greater later, hey, by the time you're 50, things should be, well, at least clear. At least you have an idea of where you're going. And then it's just a matter of working smart, using your time well, not wasting your time on things that really don't matter. And same thing about your money. It's one of those things where you just become more and more focused with time. In the beginning, you have a vague idea. By the time you're 50, you got clarity. It clicks in every 10 years. So if you're 20 something, hope for the 30s. When you get to the 30s, you hope for the 40s. When you get to the 40s, it's like, I can't wait for the 50s. 50s and 60s. 60s.
I don't know,
Slow
Vinnie.
down.
My 60s have been a little unclear.
I've enjoyed my 60s. It's still getting
Anyway,
clearer, though. You're getting clarity. You're winning. now.
Okay, does anyone, I'm sorry, does anybody have a question that does not have to do with clarity or finances? I mean, I love these questions. I love all this, but is there anything else?
Yeah, if you want to unmute yourself, if you want to just speak
Yeah.
up, is that what you want to do, Grace, or do you want to
Yeah,
read
sure.
a question?
Yeah, it's 8:25.
Question?
Yes.
Hi, Grace.
Hey, Lamore.
How are you?
Okay.
Hi, everyone. You know, I am subscribed to Artist Talk on Art, so I just recently discovered this about your organization, which is fascinating, and I'm grateful for that. Is it possible for artists to still, you know, women artists to be able to apply or contribute?
Are you talking to me in my project?
Yes, just in
Pandora box?
general, the whole, yeah.
Okay, all right, you're asking basically how I choose the women to be in the project.
Yes.
Okay, when I started this project, I started in late September of 2018. I did not know how many women I would put in. I started very spontaneously,
Yes.
as I said earlier. And I painted with a big brush, very broad brush. The few people I knew, and they recommended, and I learned, and I researched, and at some point, actually, Cydney Williams, you know, I was bitching to her.
You came to
when I
Jersey
was-
City, baby.
when she was interviewing me actually about tip and tell. And I was like, you know, there's so many of us. How do I choose who I put in this? It's only me. I have no money. I can't even travel. I mean, the few color pictures, if you guys saw that slideshow going by, the few color pictures that were in there, I did those during Zoom. And I realized, oh, this is a great way to travel. You know, I was able to photograph Eleanor Anton in San Diego, Miriam, oh my God, I can't remember. I'm blanking on her name in Iran. I'm so sorry if you're watching this. You know, my friend Marta Jovanovic in Serbia, Miriro Wandambiria via Zimbabwe and Switzerland. I mean,
Well, I'm asking really.
but in
is
terms
this-
of getting people in this, all right, it's like a spiral. I started out broad brush. At this point, I decided 360 because there's too many of us, and I don't want this to be my life's work. I want it to have an end. So,
I see.
Is it closed? I think her question is it
it's not closed. It's not closed. I have done 260 women. At this point, I need balance. It is about everybody. So I have made a spreadsheet. I look at who I have. I'm like, okay, I need more people here, here, and here. So, you know, it's like and at this point, I know a lot more people than when I began. So anyone that's interested in being the project, I'm more than interested in learning who everybody is. In terms of my being able to photograph you personally and add you in here, I'm not sure. That's all I can say about that.
Yeah, I was just, not even so much just for myself. I was curious for other people as well. I wanted to know if your project needs help, you know.
It always needs help.
promotion. Right, so that was
I
really
love help.
the question, you know. I've been involved in the art world for many years, so I was just going to ask about that. And I'm really sorry, our car was just stolen. That's why I had to keep running back and forth. So
Oh my God. Oh, that's
a lot of craziness in New York, and a lot
Oh
of
my
craziness
God.
in the art world, right? So yeah, so I was just curious if this is some ongoing type of thing.
How many have you done, Grace?
I have done, I think, just about 260 since Brenda Goodwin was my first person that I photographed. When I had my aha moment about I was going to do this, and it was mid-September in 2018, and just the trajectory of this project has kind of echoed every single, I mean, everything that's gone through, hashtag Me Too, Black Lives Matter, George Floyd's murder, global warming getting worse, the pandemic. I mean, this has been a really wild and the rolling back of Roe v. Wade. I've been rereading Octavia Butler. Has anyone ever read her? Earthseed, The Parable of the Sower and the Talents. I mean, she's doing these incredible works. She's the first basically dystopian writer, but she did them in the 90s, and she is so prescient. It's like she could be talking about Donald Trump. I'm like, oh my God,
It's a real strange time we're in. I'm in one of those moods too, because we just keep going round and round. I mean, this thing with Roe v. Wade being pulled back, and now they want to take away the pills, and they just voted to take away the pills in Wisconsin. I mean, it's just this feeling of going backwards. It's bizarre. I mean, we literally are going back in time.
It's also, what's hard, I guess when I put down Donald Trump, it's like, in terms of people being Democrat or Republican, I mean, it's all good. It's just fascistic thinking.
When's your next talk, Grace? Because you're running out of time. When's your next talk? Because we all want to talk some more.
I need to be doing a lot.
Yeah. Yes, part two.
Full disclosure. I'm really nervous public speaking. You notice I have my glass of wine here. Anyway, yes, I need to be doing more, because part of this project is sharing what the pictures say. It makes a 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional. It just needs to be shared with the world. So yeah, I'll be doing more.
Grace, if I may.
Sure. I just don't know when.
I've enjoyed every moment of this, and I recognize many women that have appeared at Artist Talk on Art in your slideshow. And so I commend you for your choices that you made there. I didn't know them all, obviously, but I recognize many. But I want to thank you for organizing and moderating this, and for the panelists, Vinnie Bagwell, Cydney Williams, Babs Reingold, and Moko Fukuyama. And also thank our volunteers and board for making Artist Talk on Art the perennial in the art world that it is. And hope to see you all next Monday. And I wish you a good night. Thank you for joining us.
What's happening next Monday?
It's a panel put together, organized by Vernita Nemec. It's a women's panel of 4 artists. Well, you'll find it on our website.
Yeah.
We're continuing the Women's Month.
Exactly.
I was so glad that Grace agreed to do this, and that we got this going, because I think, Vinnie, you're right. We need another one, man.
And I'm just going to say one more thing before this closes down. Everybody, I see all your comments in the side there. Thank you, everyone, for coming here, for your comments. You could always reach me through my project, a Pandora's Box project, 2 X's, X with a kiss. So, ask questions, feel free. And thank you, Doug. Thank you, team. Thank you, everybody. So
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you, Grace.